The current voting age is too low and does not reflect the maturity and responsibility required for political participation. In this section, I will explain why 16-year-olds are not ready to vote and why raising the voting age would benefit our democracy. First of all, 16-year-olds are still kids who lack the life experience and cognitive skills to make informed and rational decisions. According to scientists, the brain is not fully developed until the mid-20s, especially the parts that are responsible for impulse control, risk assessment, and long-term planning. These are essential abilities for voting, as voters need to weigh the pros and cons of different policies, candidates, and parties, and consider the consequences of their choices for themselves and others. 16-year-olds are more likely to be influenced by peer pressure, emotions, or misinformation than older voters. They are also more prone to engage in risky behaviors such as substance abuse, violence, or vandalism, which can impair their judgment in civic values. Secondly, 16-year-olds are not fully independent citizens who have a stake in the political system. Most of them still live with their parents or guardians, who provide for their basic needs and make decisions for them. They do not pay taxes, own property, serve in the military, or face legal consequences as adults. They are also not exposed to the diversity and complexity of society, as they mostly interact with people of their own age group and background. Therefore, they do not have a clear understanding of the issues that affect different groups of people, such as workers, immigrants, minorities, or seniors. They also do not have a long-term perspective on the future of the country, as they have not experienced the changes and challenges that come with adulthood. Thirdly, lowering the voting age to 16 would not increase voter turnout or civic engagement among young people. In fact, it would have the opposite effect. Studies have shown that voting is a habit that is formed early in life, and that people who start voting later are less likely to vote regularly. Therefore, if 16-year-olds are allowed to vote when they are not interested or prepared, they might become disillusioned or apathetic and stop voting altogether. Moreover, lowering the voting age would send a wrong message to young people that they do not need to learn more about politics or society before they vote. It would also undermine the credibility and legitimacy of elections, as older voters might feel that their votes are diluted or cancelled out by uninformed or immature voters. In conclusion, the current voting age is too low and should be raised to reflect the maturity and responsibility required for political participation. 16-year-olds are not ready to vote because they lack the cognitive skills, life experience, and independence that are necessary for making good voting choices. Raising the voting age would benefit our democracy by ensuring that voters are informed, rational, and invested in the political system. A higher voting age would improve the quality of democracy and reduce the influence of populism and misinformation. Democracy is a system of government that relies on the informed and rational participation of citizens. However, in recent years, democracy has been threatened by the rise of populism and misinformation, which undermine the quality of public debate and erode public trust in democratic institutions. Populism is a political style that appeals to the emotions and prejudices of the people, often by scapegoating minorities, elites, or foreigners. Misinformation is false or misleading information that is deliberately spread to influence public opinion or obscure the truth. One of the main sources of populism and misinformation is social media, which has become a dominant platform for political communication and information. Social media allows anyone to create and share content with millions of users, without any editorial oversight or fact-checking. This creates an environment where rumors, conspiracy theories, and propaganda can flourish and spread rapidly. Moreover, social media algorithms tend to amplify content that generates engagement, regardless of its accuracy or quality. As a result, users are exposed to more extreme and polarizing views, which can fuel anger, resentment, and intolerance. One of the main targets of populism and misinformation is young voters, who are more likely to use social media as their primary source of news and information. Young voters are also more likely to be influenced by their peers, celebrities, or influencers, rather than by experts, journalists, or politicians. Young voters may lack the critical thinking skills, civic knowledge, and political experience to evaluate the credibility and relevance of the information they encounter online. Young voters may also be more susceptible to emotional appeals, such as fear, anger, or hope, which can override their rational judgment. Therefore, a higher voting age would improve the quality of democracy and reduce the influence of populism and misinformation. A higher voting age would ensure that only mature and responsible citizens can participate in democratic decision-making. A higher voting age would also encourage young people to invest more time and effort in learning about politics and society before they can vote. A higher voting age would create a more informed and rational electorate, which would be less vulnerable to manipulation and deception by populist and misleading actors. A higher voting age would not only benefit democracy, but also young people themselves. A higher voting age would protect young people from being exploited or misled by politicians who do not have their best interests at heart. A higher voting age would also give young people more time to develop their own opinions and values, rather than being pressured or influenced by others. A higher voting age would empower young people to make better choices for themselves and for their future. A fair way to implement a higher voting age is to link it to civic education and engagement, such as completing a course or volunteering in the community. This would ensure that young voters have the knowledge and skills to participate in their democracy responsibly and effectively. Some studies have shown that 16-year-olds have adequate political knowledge to make informed decisions, but others have found that civic education has a limited effect on turnout in adulthood. Therefore, simply lowering the voting age may not be enough to increase youth engagement and representation. Instead, a higher voting age could be coupled with incentives and opportunities for young people to learn about and practice civic duties. For example, one proposal by Vivek Ramaswamy, a potential candidate for the U.S. presidency in 2024, suggests that individuals should have 3 options to exercise their right to vote at age 18, completing 6 months of direct service in the U.S. military or first response services, passing a civic education test identical to the U.S. citizenship exam, or waiting until age 25. Ramaswamy argues that this would create a sense of civic duty and appreciation for the privileges of citizenship among young voters. Another possibility is to require high school students to complete a year-long course on government and civics, as well as a civics project that involves volunteering, organizing, or campaigning for a cause or candidate of their choice. This would expose students to different perspectives and issues, as well as develop their critical thinking and communication skills. According to the Center for American Progress, civics education can help create young voters and activists who are more likely to register and vote in future elections. A higher voting age linked to civic education and engagement could also help address some of the challenges and inequalities that plague the current system. For instance, it could reduce the influence of money and misinformation on young voters who may be more susceptible to manipulation and persuasion. It could also narrow the gaps in civic knowledge and participation between different racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups by providing equal access and exposure to civics education and opportunities. In conclusion, a higher voting age does not have to mean less democracy. On the contrary, it could be a way to strengthen democracy by ensuring that young voters are well informed and actively involved in their communities and country.